that. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about really just, I guess, kind of another, just another conversation about, working with investor clients. By no means do I know everything, and I see Jim just hopped on, so I know he works with investor clients as well. So, but just kind of put some thoughts out there, put some concepts out there. This presentation I actually put together with one of my managers in Ohio, and some of the pieces are kind of what he's gone through, and examples that he's, actually purchased or helped someone purchase. So that's kind of what when we get into some examples, it's really his, but, just the idea that, investors are out there, there's some experts, but, are you an expert in, like, commercial property involving like a business, a commercial building, or, a 4 unit is considered, or a 5 unit for up to 4, but a 5 unit apartment building is considered a commercial property. So there's different levels of, commercial properties, when you're talking about working with an investor. So we're just going to go through the slides here.
Thank you very much.
Just the, Redfin. So, and this is not so much in our area, but just the idea, it's kind of a scary stat, that out of every 4 single family homes bought in the United States in 2023 was purchased by an investor. So the idea that, investors are out there, I don't, in most areas, the rents have increased. Folks are, not only struggling to buy a house, but also struggling to rent anymore. So it's almost like, what is going on? And the idea that, some of those investor, properties purchased by an investor are corporate companies where they're literally just 100% corporate. They're just, it's not just, hey, I want to invest and I'm going to buy this house and rent it out. It's a corporation that are buying real estate more and more. So that's kind of a side thought with 1 out of every 4, being purchased by an investor. Bigger Pockets is just a kind of a news outlet. 32 billion was spent in Q4 in 2023 by investors. I don't know. That's a lot of real estate. So just a thought behind, thinking that, there's a lot of money out there that's floating around from investors. And quite frankly, it's just up to us, at what level would I work with an investor? Just a single family, just a 2-family, up to 4, am I able to handle working with an investor that wants to buy a 20 unit? Just it's up to us, and whether we can do it. We want to learn it. We want to put the effort in. That's just, kind of up to each one of us individually. So it says reread the above statements, but really just the fact that 32 billion was spent in one quarter. 32 billion. So, just why investors, just really, I'm going to kind of skip, because really the idea behind the investors is they're really everywhere. Like it can be that just average Joe that buys, a property here, a property there, building a little portfolio, or you'll see on the right, corporate America, where I said that there are actually corporations that are, buying real estate with the sole purpose of renting it out. And it's actually just whether the corporation, that's all they do, or a division of a corporation that is on the real estate side. So just a couple pictures. So the average Joe, just folks that work every day and buy a property here or there, building a portfolio, or the corporate America, where it's institutional buyers, just buying up large chunks of properties to rent out. So why represent investors? This is kind of the idea that, that we think about, like, the word investor, the word commercial real estate, can be a little daunting, if you're not familiar with it. So again, that's kind of the idea here. Just throw some terms out, some terms that you should learn, whether you're doing a single family or a 20 unit. We'll kind of get into some terms that will come up. And if it's a new investor, hey, they can learn with you. If it's a solid investor that just knows, they know the terms. If they say the word cap rate, they expect you to kind of know it or be able to figure it out. So we'll just kind of go through some of it as we go through today. So really, the idea is an investor, they buy in good markets and bad markets. Really, because there's no emotion. So I mean, they are 100% a numbers game, and I'm going to get to that. So they don't, I mean, if it's in quotes a bad market, well, then they just won't pay as much for a property. I mean, they're still going to buy, because guess what? It's still going to, they still want the investment. They, still want the rents. They want to, build their portfolio. So it's just a matter of, whether it's a good market, where a good market to me is active, things are selling. If a bad market comes around and things are sitting on the market or inventory's low, it really doesn't matter to them. Maybe they don't buy as much, if inventory's low and the prices go higher, because, it's they need to pay for it, and know they're going to get the money out in a certain time frame to make it work for them, because they're not going to hold it. If they need it paid off in 10 years, they're not going to buy something that takes 15 to pay off if it doesn't work for them. So residential versus commercial, kind of mentioned this, but 1 to 4 units, pros: easier to buy and sell, easier to finance, easier to manage. So really, this is what we see a lot of in Jamestown is, even though there could be a professional investor that owns a lot of units, but in reality, that's what we're going to see. The average Joe is just, hey, I'm going to buy a 2 unit. We're going to maybe even live in one, but I'm really just going to buy a 2 unit. And then maybe they buy another 2 unit, or even a single family, keeping it simple, maybe, building a portfolio where they get 1 and 2 and maybe have 5 in the end, something like that. Obviously a con is fewer doors. So when we talk about doors, kind of, thinking on the property manager side, but I guess if you're the owner, the investor, if you have a 2 family, you have 2 doors, obviously, it's 2 doors, and you have 2 rents, and you have, 2 of everything. Well, if you go buy a 20 unit, you have 20 doors in one property, 2 doors, 1 property, 20. It's, still, you got to manage the 20, you got to be able to pay for the 20, you got to, be able to deal with the 20. So it's not for everyone, but if you're building this portfolio, it's just a matter of where you start. Maybe you start at a 2 and then build it up, just depends. So commercial is 5+ units. So obviously a commercial can involve a commercial building and things like that. But we're kind of thinking of residential per se, units to rent. A 5+ is considered a commercial unit. Pros: obviously more doors equal more cash flow. Cons: harder to finance, harder to sell, harder to manage. If you have a 2 unit and it's just you got two renters to deal with, 2 issues at a particular time. Well, if you got a 20 unit, you got 20 potential issues at any given time, and obviously you can kind of just think through that as is needing to be ready to deal with that, or obviously potentially hire a property manager or something like that. And then just, if you want to make a small amount of money, buy small buildings. If you want to make a large amount, buy large buildings. But not everybody can just do that. So basic numbers to run for a single family. So, typically, of course, could be a cash purchase, but a lot of investors actually kind of use the mortgages as way to potentially buy more properties. So instead, if I got 100 grand, you know, I could buy one property, or I can use the 100 grand to buy 10 properties, you know, putting 10 down on each. So just kind of the thought behind that. But basically a single family, you know, you have the mortgage, principal and interest, you know, property taxes, insurance. So that's called PITA, PITI. So again, if you just kind of hear that term, you kind of know property, interest, taxes, insurance, kind of the core of what you know, what you pay when you buy a house. Obviously, if you know other things, you know, property management fee, HOA fee, you know, potentially utilities, things like that. But that's the core of, you know, hey, if I'm going to buy this property, here's my PITA and here's my rent. You know, does it work right from the start? And then anything on top of it also has to figure in those numbers. So principal interest. So just actually a couple websites that are good for you know, kind of doing a amortization chart. So if you know, if the property is 100,000, obviously you can go to a banker, but there's a couple, you know, websites right there that'll help you, you know, determine if you want a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. And if you put 5% down or 25% down, it's just part of the numbers that an investor needs to, in like I said, an investor that knows what they're doing and have done it more than once, you know, just has these. A lot of them have just a, you know, like, well, let me get back to you. And they're going to go to their spreadsheet and they're going to type in some numbers and it's going to calculate out, you know, if it makes sense. But often, you know, for the average Joe, this is a big piece. If I'm buying my first investment property, this is a big piece of, you know, well, I'd like to pay it off sooner, but you know, then the mortgage is higher, and what's the rent, and can I actually afford this, and you know, do I have up to 25% down, or you know, you gotta shop banks and see if there's someone that, you know, even though I'm not going to live in it, typically it's a higher down payment, but now some banks are you know, treating it more of a normal house and allowing you to put less down. So again, it all depends on the property, but just knowing some of this, just having it in our head, so that if we talk to an investor, you know, it just, whether we bring it up or they do, we just understand what they're thinking. So that's another piece of this session. So property taxes, you know, I'm gonna just throw these. I'm gonna throw those up because, you know, do not trust Zillow. Real, you know, really don't trust anyone. So we actually get the, you know, we get the spreadsheet that says exactly what the tax rate is. We can get the assessment from, you know, from the public auditor site. We're fortunate enough to have like Chautauqua GIS, which will tell us, you know, exactly what you know, the folks paid or are paying or paid the last bill. One thing we do have to remember is, you know, our school taxes. A lot, you know, I say a lot. Some folks have a credit, star credit, things like that. So again, you know, this investor is going to rely on very key numbers to make an offer. So, and if the numbers are wrong, the mortgage, it is what it is. But property taxes, if we say it's 3,000, but there's a star rebate in there, so really this person's going to pay 3,800. That's $800 more a year. That, you know, obviously divide that out, you know, they're going to come up with a number that you know, they need to come up with each month. So it's very important that we have the accurate info. So obviously any properties we sell, it's important, but investors kind of takes it to the next level. So insurance, you know, really shop around. So, I mean, I know investors that, you know, oh, I have my insurance guy in, you know, they're buying an investment property and, you know, it's whatever, $2,500 a year. And it's like, well, that's my guy, you know, and then they shop it and they can get the same exact policy for 1,800. And it's like, oh, well, that's $700 difference, you know, like they're not going to jump ship for 100 or whatever because they got a guy. But you know, shopping around really, really does matter. And then just things like umbrella insurance and renter's insurance, you know, kind of help cover yourself in different ways for insurance wise. So just an example, single family rental that cost me $569 a year for insurance. I have a duplex that costs $661 a year for insurance. And this is an example from my manager, and those are two different insurance companies, because he's like, no, I'll have two different insurance companies if I can save money. So here again, I'm going to just kind of throw this all up and then we can talk about it. So this is an example of a property he bought, purchased it for 80 grand, put 20 down. So that's 16. The mortgage is 64,000. The interest rate at the time is 4.75, and he did a 30-year fixed mortgage. So his principal and interest is 333.85. Property taxes, insurance, HOA, property management. So his total expenses are $672.78. And this is what an investor will do. This is, what's it going to cost me? And again, if utilities were, hey, I pay the gas, I pay the whatever, if there's anything else, it gets added to this. So in his mind, to make this purchase work, the rent better be more than $672.78, period. So rent, $1,050, cash flow. So so in this, in this deal, he's making $377.22, plus he's paying the mortgage and everything else. So basically he's got a plus each month, and the mortgage is being paid, and he's, obviously gaining equity each month as he pays that, and obviously the rest of the expenses. So again, that was, just an example of the investor, they're going to do that, if he's got the 16 grand down, if he puts more, if he puts less, it's just a strictly a calculation, which it should be, for the investor. So, so I'm going to throw these three up. So these are some of the terms that an investor will throw out, and they're important. So it's important that we at least know them, are aware of them, even if we have to remind ourselves. If we don't work with an investor every day, and we're kind of like, oh, I remember cap rate or whatever, it's still, we can Google it quick, but we're going to at least know, like, okay, cap rate, that's, kind of used in by an investor, but it's really the percentage that estimates the rate of return. So, and it says for a commercial property, but in reality, you can do a cap rate on a two-family, a four-family, which is obviously residential, not considered commercial, but basically, thinking in the investment side. So, in cap rate is net income, net operating income divided by property value, and that's going to be a percentage. So typically, it's a 5% or a 10% cap rate. So and it's just a number they use to determine their return. And then cash on cash percentage rate, measuring the cash return on cash invested. So I'm not going to go through each one of these. I have this presentation, so I'm happy to share it with you guys, so you can kind of look through these. But each one of these is really an investor analyzing the next step of their investment. So the initial piece, okay, so the rent covers the expenses, but now how long is it going to take me to pay for it? How I'm making $377 a month, how, plus it getting paid for, how long was that mortgage? How, what's the value? It also, can help you determine, what the actual value is on the property. So if it's listed for 120 and you're thinking, well, the numbers kind of say 100, that's just is what it is. They're not going to pay 120 for it if the numbers don't make sense. They'll be like, no, I'll just move on to the next one, but I'll give you 100 because those numbers make sense for me. So sometimes we hear that. I've heard it. I just had three rentals in Fredonia listed, and the guy that ended up buying them was 100% numbers, like, and this is what I'm offering, period. So it's kind of interesting when you do kind of hear them talk about it. But gross rent multiplier, so it shows the amount of time it takes gross annual income to pay for a property. So this one's really important. You know, am I going to be able to pay for this in 10 years? Even if I take a 30-year mortgage, the idea is, you know, I can kind of pay down the mortgage. So I don't have to pay the mortgage for 30 years. I really just kind of want it to make sense so that I can pay for it all in 10 years. So I'm going to pay down the mortgage with some of that $377 a month I have. You know, obviously always depends on, you know, if you have issues or vacancies, things like that. But in general, exactly what, you know, how long is it going to take me to pay for this? And everyone's different. Everyone's different. So, I mean, some investors can be, you know, 5 years is my number. Some are 10 years, you know, whatever that number is. But just knowing that, you know, that extremely important to any investor is, you know, when's it going to be mine? And then I'm making the 1,050 a month. Like after 10 years, I want to make that 1,050 a month. You know, because the mortgage, you know, besides taxes, so it wouldn't quite be that much. But I'm not going to have the principal and principal and interest payment. I want that to be in my pocket. So just some things to consider, and again, this will come into their numbers is vacancy rate. So it's ideal. Hey, this, you know, this four units, you know, fully rented, and like, oh, that's great. But you know, you have to think about when someone moves out. Not only do you have to put a few bucks in the property, you know, to spruce it up or whatever, but how long is it going to be vacant? So you know that $1,000 missing a month. But guess what? You still have the mortgage, you still have the interest, you still have the property taxes, you know, the insurance, you still have all those. So, you know, you kind of build in a vacancy rate to help cover, you know, how much you're going to pay for it, or, you know, if you actually move forward with the property. So just, you know, constantly think about pieces that kind of get put into you know, what they're thinking about when they're ready to purchase. So commercial properties, you know, come with more expenses than residential properties. So often, you know, if in some investors that buy two families still want a property manager because they're like, hey, I work and stuff. I'm not going to deal with it. So, you know, building in, but typically when you have a 5-unit or a 20-unit or a larger property, or you have 100 doors total, you often have a property management. So again, that fee comes into play. You know, maintenance on a 20-unit building. I mean, you just got to think it's more maintenance than a 2-unit. It is what it is. So common area maintenance. So you're going to have a you know, an entryway and, you know, maybe a sitting area, you know, things like that. Storage units sometimes in the basement in a larger building. So, you know, just thoughts on, you know, if you are working with someone on a commercial property, again, which is 5 units or more, you know, just things to consider. You know, landscaping, snow removal. Often we don't, you know, we don't see that in 2 units. You shovel your own driveway and, you know, you mow the lawn, or maybe you have someone mow the lawn, but it's not as much if you have a large parking lot because you got a 20-unit. So just some things to think about if you know, if you're working with someone that is interested or working on purchasing a larger unit, larger building. I'll just throw these up. So, you know, metric and valuation technique has its drawbacks. So that really just talking about, you know, each investor, you know, considering things a little bit different than a different investor. So it's you know, how they do their calculations. But you know, COC gives you a better idea of return than ROI when debt is used. So if you have a mortgage, you know, really you want to use is the COC method. ROI does not take into account time, so return on investment. So you know, if the investor is like, I want it paid for in 10 years, well, then the ROI, you know, is telling them what they're going to get, but it's not telling them, you know, hey, you know, in 10 years you're going to get this much. It's going to be like, well, just over time. So again, throwing out terms, but just kind of knowing that they're out there, knowing investors use them, is kind of a key for us to get started. GRM, so gross rent multiplier, just talking about valuing a property. So, but it's also a, quick way to analyze the property. That's typically where the investor will start. Just a quick calculation. Before I even ask a question, I'm going to get some quick data and determine if it's right for me to move forward. Because if I think it's 100 and it's priced at 150, and maybe 150 makes sense for someone that bought it, but it's not going to work for me. They're going to do a quick calculation and just even determine if they're going to reach out to an agent or maybe want to see it. Numbers always the first thing, because seeing it is really not, oh, I love this place. Seeing it's going to be like, it'll do. There's no issues. It's in good shape. It's not like, oh, I love that room or anything like that. All numbers with the investors. Numbers and condition, but not loving a property, just knowing that it's going to make them money. So net operating income, so it doesn't take into account capital investments, taxes, or cost of financing. So again, like throwing those four out there, each investor is going to use them, but use them in different ways. So, I mean, this is just an example. I just kind of wanted to throw it out here. Like, this is an example of a spreadsheet that an investor would have. Like in the guy that just bought the properties I dealt with, I didn't work with him, but I knew he had a spreadsheet because he was very, very, he just knew what he was doing, and they're going to plug in a purchase price, and then let it fill out, and then they're going to play with, well, do I, how much money did I put down? What's my interest rate? Do I do a 15-year mortgage? Do I do a 30? And all it's going to come down to is this number on the right, plain and simple. It's just going to come down to, does that number make sense? And can I make it make sense? Some of them are willing to play with numbers and analyze, like, oh geez, if I increased rent $100, it might make the difference. But just know that it will always come down to this number on the right, for them to make the appointment to see it and then determine conditions good, it's in good shape, the renters are going to stay, other factors, but it always starts with the money. And again, just another example of a spreadsheet that an investor typically will have. So I'm going to just throw these out. So, just the idea that, investors are out there, the number, that they spent 32 billion in a quarter, Q4 in 2023. So we know the investors are out there. We know, that we don't have to be investing experts to work with them. Like, we can learn as we go, but knowing the terminology, knowing some of the calculations, and just be willing to, to take on an investor, I think is very valuable. Just throw all these up there. Just, just some other pieces. When I talk money is always the first thing. It really is. Like, it always starts with the money, but when they see the property, believe me, they will be looking at the condition, looking at the roof, the windows, the furnace, those pieces, because they don't want to own it a year I mean, you never know, but they don't want to own it a year or pay for a certain number just because it makes sense if the roof needs to be done in 6 months or even 2 years. Like, that'll all factor in. So just kind of know that capital improvements are always a piece. No tenants, lease up periods, the tenant piece is always that, they love when a tenant's in the building and is, like, they'll always ask, all right, do you have any issues with the tenant? Do they pay their rent on time? Do they give you any problems? And if that's good, they're like, leave them. because they're good. If they pay the rent and don't, aren't a pain, then let's keep them. But if there's no tenants, that factors in. If they need to do work when they purchase before it gets rented, like every single piece of that kind of plays into the consideration for them. So, so just a thought, when writing a contract on an investment property, it's really key, like security deposits. It may not, like our attorneys here, are often on it, but if it's not in, like in the contract, you'd hate to see, a mix up with security deposits. And then, so there's 4 units and each one has $1,000. That's $4,000 that should go to the buyer. Because if one of those tenants moves out a week after you close, you got to give them $1,000 back. So you got to make sure that they transfer to the buyer. Obviously, all rents are prorated. Again, our attorneys are really good at that, but just kind of making sure that you're aware of, oh, that's, yeah, I do have to think about that. Or when you have a conversation with your client and he's, the investor, like, oh yeah, we're going to make sure all security, again, you're just kind of showing that, you're able to handle the deal. And then where to find investors. I mean, just kind of ideas. So if we're actually looking for them, just think about finding investors in Facebook groups, any meetings. So REIA, so, investment associations. I don't know if they still do, honestly. I don't know if anyone knows, but Jamestown had a group that of investors. They would chat or share. And I was in it for a little bit. I think they would share names of tenants, like, hey, I got an application from this tenant. Did anyone ever have any problems with them? That type of thing. So, but I'm not sure if that still exists in Jamestown. But just networking events. So if you're actually kind of thinking of finding them, think about really online pieces. Sometimes in the community pages, somebody's talking about investment opportunities or wanting investments, things like that. So again, if you're out there and looking, don't be afraid to throw your name in the hat and potentially find some to work with. But also if you have some, or sometimes we just get calls from folks, that's obviously great too. Your SOI. So what do they want to hear? So this is kind of what I was talking about, is really speak their lingo. So just knowing that terminology, or if they say, hey, what's the cap rate, or hey, I figured out the cap rate, we at least know what it is. Like we should be able to learn to calculate it. But initially, just kind of knowing that terminology, mention ways to help them save more on their buildings. So if you know someone that can help, or you talk about ideas that that would help them or potentially help them by maybe owner financing sometimes, or hey, I have this banker that allows you to put less down, or just really anything that we can give them to help save money. Obviously it just adds to their bottom line. So cost segregation study, 1031. So obviously a 1031 is if they own a 2-unit and sell it, and typically there would be capital gains on that. So if they bought it for 100 and sold it for 150, they would typically own capital gains, but they can take that 150 and purchase another property with it within a time frame. So things like that. But just kind of knowing that's a way to save them money. Because maybe they want another building, maybe they want something else, but for whatever reason they're going to sell this one, and instead of paying 15 grand in capital gains, let's save you that 15 grand, and we can actually just exchange properties per se. And obviously, important piece, we're not attorneys, we're not CPAs, we're not engineers, we're not property managers. So just always, you're the realtor, and if there's if they need help in certain areas, we can suggest, but we really need to put them in contact with the experts. It would make, when it gets to maybe setting up an LLC, maybe things like that, CPAs and attorneys, that's of course where they should where we should be sending them. So last, and this is just something that I added. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a self-directed IRA. So I actually have a self-directed IRA. I have it at a company called Equity Trust, and they're in Elyria, Ohio. There's just every time I start telling someone this, they're like, "Oh my God, that sounds shit." 100% on board. They have 90 billion in assets or some crazy number. So I mean, it's very legal. There's zero. I mean, it's just it's self-directed IRA. So what it is you got 100 grand. If you have access to an IRA, you can transfer it or obviously start one. But let's say you got 100 grand in a self-directed IRA. What you can do is actually purchase a property with the IRA. So you can take that 100 grand, purchase a property, and when a bill is due, it comes out of the IRA. When the rent is paid, it goes in the IRA. So really, the IRA is the bank. Like it's paying bills and it's getting the rent. And while you own the property, if the whole property was 100,000, so the IRA will actually have a deed. It will have the deed for the property. And then it will, let's say you make $500 a month. At the end of the first year, you're going to have a deed and $6,000 in your IRA. And it'll just keep going, for as long as you own the property. The huge key with a self-directed IRA is when you sell the property. So you paid 100 for it, you sell it for 150, you pay zero capital gains because the whole 150 you sold it for goes back in the IRA. And you have zero capital gains, no taxes whatsoever. So it's a big key for building your retirement. So then you got 150 and you can do whatever you want with it. You can invest it in stocks, you can loan it to someone, you can buy another property. But the idea is obviously you're going to pay taxes when you pull the money out of the IRA, but hopefully you're pulling the money out of the IRA when you're 70, whatever, let's say 72, and you're paying 10% or 12% tax rate or whatever, and not a 25% capital gain rate. So it works great. I've bought I'm on the verge of buying maybe my third property with it. So I bought and sold, and all the money goes back into the IRA, and I've never paid a capital gains tax at all on it. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there. Some folks don't know it. This is ideal for just that person that does have some money that could be transferred into a self-directed IRA. So you could have an account somewhere with 100 grand. If you have access to it, you can just transfer it over. And then potentially buy investment property with it. So kind of wanted to throw that out there. Happy to chat with anyone a little more about that, but kind of wanted to throw it out there as a way to have a conversation with, if you do have a conversation with someone and, they're like, oh, mortgage and how much do I have down? And, just the idea of, hey, would you be interested in potentially doing a self-directed IRA? And in growing your retirement funds. So just wanted to throw that out there. And I think that is the last page. It is. So I'm going to just pause, see if anyone has any questions, any thoughts. I know, I'm sure there are some folks out there that have worked with investors. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to to what we've talked about, but I'm going to pause for a second and just see if you guys have anything.
Hey, Wayne,
Hey, yeah, Rick.
can you put an existing property in a self-directed IRA?
What you can't do is if you own it now. So if you owned a property now, I mean, you'd have to sell it and then buy it back kind of thing. But yeah, if you own something now, they won't let you transfer it. But any new purchase, yeah, you certainly could. And technically, and I say technically because it's kind of the rule, but you're not allowed to have any use of the personal use of the property. So, you know, if you were to buy a condo and rent it out, you technically can't, you know, use it personally, you know, in that time or stay in it. Not that I haven't seen it done, but technically you can't. So. All right. Anybody else have any questions? This is recorded, so obviously we'll post it. But if anyone has any questions, obviously, like I said,
Did
but
you
yes,
get access to our YouTube to post those?
I haven't. If you will, I
don't
was
know
going to
why
call the
you-
office after this, but if you can, Rick, the YouTube you sent me, is that the office login?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay. Okay. I just need that email. I don't know if I couldn't read
That's
your
the
writing.
username, that's the username and password.
Okay. What is the email? Because I couldn't get it to work. It was
Our office email is, I think is homes@reahomesearch.com, isn't it?
Yeah, Richard's right.
okay. All right. I'm gonna, they're right. I have them ready to post. I just was gonna need the access. So I
You
tried
should be
that
able to just
login.
go on Facebook and look up our website and go up. I mean, look up, I'm sorry, you should be able to go on YouTube, go on the REA site, just in the upper right-hand corner, click on it and log in.
Yeah. I'll try that right now. So I
Yeah,
was trying, yeah,
that's just the admin info you needed to get in there.
yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, they're ready to
Hey.
post. So I'll be
Okay.
posting all the videos, or the sessions, today. or
Hey, Wayne,
Yes.
to expand on Rick's question, an existing home, you said if you already own it, you can't. But what if your corporation owned it? You could run it through this IRA.
Yeah,
Couldn't
so
you?
what they say is if you have any, like, so if you're the majority owner of the corp, it's,
Okay.
you know what I mean? It's still technically, so I mean, not that I've never done it where if there was just a, you know, sort of a transfer and it was, you know, it was just the corporation was just named something. I haven't done it where I don't know if they would look and be like, hey, who's the
Oh,
majority?
yeah.
You know what I mean? And, you know, but
Right,
it
yeah.
says that if you own it or you're, you know, you're the
Yeah.
majority owner, or the majority person in a corp or an LLC or anything, you know, it's kind of the same thing. So
Yeah, fine line. So if it's in this IRA, who's the actual owner of record?
the IRA is the actual owner.
Okay, so that whatever the IRA
Yeah.
name is, that's the owner.
Yeah, so it's weird. So literally, you know, when someone's bought a property with the IRA with me, like the on the contract, it says, you know, equity trust, you know, IRA, you know, and then the name, like, yeah, it's not just Jim Johnson
Okay.
buying the property. It's the name of the IRA that
Yeah,
actually
right.
buys it, and it goes on record, and the deed says the IRA.
Okay.
And then, you know, yeah. So,
But then do you have any protection like you get if you were to buy it under your corporation?
well, the deal with that is they can only get what the IRA, because the IRA is the owner, so they can only get what the IRA has, which is, you know, I mean, could be just, you know, just the property because it's just a deed. So really the IRA,
Okay.
you know what I mean? So yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. If anyone's wondering, if you just go to, you can Google equity trust, or the website is trustetc.com, trustetc.com. And that's just I don't even know if there's more now. I think that's the very first one that ever came out, but that's the one I have, is Equity Trust. And they have a help section, and you know, are you new to this kind of thing? So it's kind of cool to, you know, if you're interested at all, to check out the site and you know, watch some videos and learn about it a little bit more. So.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. And I will get those recordings uploaded today, tomorrow at the latest, and then we'll be all caught up. So in our
Hey,
next
Wayne.
session is,
Hey, Wayne, one more question.
yeah.
I don't have a question, just when you have a minute, if you could give me a call.
Oh, yes, I will. All right. Apparently I have trouble with my dates so next week I have Tuesday, the 24th. And it's Thursday, the 24th. So Jeepers creepers.
What's our next meeting?
So next week we're going to do Thursday, the 24th, and we're going to talk about the real estate advantage tools that we have access to. So next
I'm going to give
Thursday-
you a current calendar, Wayne. You sounds like you're a couple years behind.
sounds
I
like
know,
the
like
days
what is
are
going
off.
on? Like it's the first time I've ever used a calendar in my
What's
life.
it say on it, 2022?
Jeepers. I don't know what I was doing the day I put the schedule together, but yeah, next Thursday at noon, we'll do a session on the tools we have. So
All right.
otherwise, yeah, Richard, I'll call you as soon as we hang up.
Okay, thanks, Wayne.
All right, sounds good. Take care, everyone.
Would you-